There were 145 combat clashes on the front line over the past day. The enemy attacked the most in the Julipole direction. The General Staff counted 34 attacks by the occupiers in the areas of Julipole, Mern, and towards Sviatopetrivka, Zaliznikne, Dobropilia, and Starukrainka. There were 22 enemy assaults in the Pokrovsk direction and 20 in the Sloviansk direction. 7 attacks were recorded in both the Oleksandrivka and Lyman sectors of the front. The enemy tried 3 times to break through the defensive lines of our defenders in the Kupiansk and southern Slobozhansky directions. Vladislav Voloshin is on the line, Colonel and spokesperson for the Southern Ukraine Defense Forces. Mr. Vladislav, welcome. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Glory to Ukraine.
Glory to the heroes. So let's start with the Julipole direction. The Russians are now specifically focusing their assaults on the railway in this direction. Could you please further explain why this is happening? And actually, what is the operational situation there?
Indeed, the single highest number of combat engagements, a total of 18 separate incidents, were recorded over the course of the past 24 hours. The Russians attempted to break through and enter to take full control of the village of Zaliznichne. That right there is the station, or more specifically, the Julipole railway station. The enemy is currently trying their best to take control of this settlement because, first of all, it is situated directly to the south and to the southwest of the town of Julipole. That is to say, in order to fully encircle the city of Julipole, since the enemy forces still cannot take control of it and completely push out the Ukrainian defense forces, they have strategically decided, first of all, to extensively mine the area. They are planting landmines along all the roads and paths leading into Julipole, as well as the streets and even the private yards and courtyards. And since they simply cannot completely drive out the defense forces from there, they have now decided to bypass the city entirely and encircle it from both the northern and the southern flanks. In order to bypass from the south, the enemy forces encountered the settlement of Zaliznichne directly on their way. Essentially, the enemy is trying to advance further west toward Verkhnya Tersa, toward the city of Orikhiv, and ultimately toward Zaporizhia. That is precisely why they need to capture this settlement to secure their flank. Throughout the course of the past several days, in the areas surrounding this small village, the enemy forces have been persistently carrying out 20 to 25 aggressive assault operations on a daily basis. A very similar situation is now unfolding in the area just north of Julipole, where there are several key settlements including Priluki, Zelene, and Dobropilia that are all facing these same conditions. There the enemy is conducting somewhat fewer assault actions, but not by much. There too we record a dozen and a half. Furthermore, it is important to note that Russian propaganda has already captured and occupied Zaliznichne for more than 2 weeks. And now it has begun to officially claim that it has taken the next settlement after Zaliznichne, Girke.
Yeah.
But, well, you understand, the fighting is taking place several kilometers away from these settlements, and in particular, there are no enemy forces in Zaliznichne itself, and Hirke remains under our control. So, as you can see, this is yet another blatant Russian fake.
What kind of specific Russian activity is currently being monitored on the border of the Dnipropetrovsk region?
The border between the Dnipropetrovsk and Zaporizhia regions is, let's say, one of the sections of the line of contact where Ukraine's defense forces are also currently conducting fairly active counterattack operations. But at the same time, the enemy is also continuing its persistent assault operations. Over the past day, we have recorded 7 assault actions. Primarily, these intense combat operations are taking place near the settlements of Zlahoda and Ternov, as well as several other surrounding localities in the area. In these specific sectors, the enemy forces are persistently trying to push back the defense forces of Ukraine, aiming to halt our ongoing recovery operations and, well, push our units as far away as they possibly can. Their ultimate objective is to seize and capture as much of the Dnipropetrovsk region as they possibly can. Furthermore, according to the latest intelligence reports, the Russian 90th Tank Division is fighting there. Furthermore, according to our intelligence reports, because the Russian military has been unable to push the Ukrainian defense forces out of that area, Several high-ranking leaders and senior commanders of this specific unit, including the division commander, the regiment commanders, and the division chief of staff, have now received severe formal reprimands from the top Russian leadership. This is due to their failure to accomplish their assigned strategic tasks, namely, to drive the Ukrainian defense forces back across the Vovcha River and successfully capture several different settlements along their way.
Well, and of course, it's worth talking about the island part of the Kherson region. Mr. Vladislav, we often mention this. What is the situation there now? What weapons do the Russians keep there? And how do they move between the islands? Do they move the infantry specifically? How are they managing to do this now, and are they succeeding at all?
Well, to be honest, they're not really succeeding at all, because whenever we detect such movements, we immediately try to destroy them, striking back with both our kamikaze drones and heavy artillery. Over the past day, one combat engagement was recorded in the island zone. The enemy tried to land troops and assault our positions on Bilorudi Island. Well, generally speaking, the situation there regarding assault actions is somewhat, let's say, calmer now than in Zaporizhzhia. In the Zaporizhzhia direction, in the Orikiv, Julipole, and Oleksandrivka directions. However, the enemy has not shown any signs of reducing the total number of kamikaze drone strikes or heavy artillery shelling. And more recently than that, for the past 3 or 4 days in a row, the enemy has actively started carrying out and executing airstrikes using unguided aerial rockets. They are currently using military army aviation units and helicopters, and they are carrying out intensive strikes against the right bank, particularly targeting various residential settlements located somewhat downstream from the now destroyed and former Kakhovka Dam. These are the specific settlements. Today, for example, they struck the area of Pridniprovsk. So the situation is quite complicated. The enemy is still stationed on those various islands. Well, they are not currently active enough right now to execute or carry out, let's say, any major assault actions, but they are definitely trying to conduct logistical operations and rotate their personnel at those specific observation posts that are located on several of the islands.
The Steel Border Brigade is targeting enemy equipment in the Kursk and northern Slobozansky directions. Over the past day, drone operators destroyed a Russian BMP and eliminated 3 occupiers. In addition to enemy personnel, their eyes were also destroyed. The enemy lost 1 Murom-M video thermal imaging surveillance system, as well as 2 enemy communication antennas. We are now joined live by Ivan Shevtsov, the head of the press service of the 15th Mobile Border Detachment Steel Border. Colonel, my greetings to you.
Greetings, glory to Ukraine.
Glory to the heroes. The QR code will appear on our screen soon as well, so we can collect funds for our needs. As soon as it appears, we will announce it and look forward to a significant increase in donations to this fund. From our viewers who are watching us right now, and now in fact the QR code has appeared for drones and the NRC. Scan it. I've already done so, taking advantage of being on air. The overall goal is 10 million hryvnias. The current amount collected is 1,777,653 hryvnias. We need to multiply that by at least 2. I would really like us to achieve this within the time we have for our conversation. What kind of drones exactly? And again, the NRC, I understand their role is becoming even greater.
Today, the NRC plays a rather important role, especially when it comes to logistics and evacuating the wounded from the battlefield. It is precisely with the help of ground robotic complexes that during this rather difficult period of weather conditions, when there is mud and slush on the battlefield, it becomes possible to deliver ammunition to positions, both for artillery units and for infantry as well. There is also the possibility to evacuate the wounded from the battlefield, because nowadays any evacuation is a risk, first and foremost for the guys who carry out this evacuation. That is why today we are focusing on purchasing such drones. The more of them we have, the more and better we will be able to perform our functional duties directly in the combat zone. And the second point is drones on fiber optics, as you mentioned from the very beginning. All these strikes against enemy equipment and enemy personnel. Nowadays, these operations are carried out mainly with the help of drones on fiber optics. The drones we purchase are capable of flying up to 30 kilometers. This is precisely behind enemy lines, and it is there that we have the opportunity to detect and destroy enemy equipment.
Regarding the situation in your area of responsibility, looking at the General Staff's reports over the past few days, probably over the past week, a cautious conclusion suggests itself that enemy activity seems to be subsiding. Is that really the case in practice?
In practice, that's not quite the case. Over the last 24 hours, the enemy forces attempted twice to storm our defensive positions in the Kursk direction. Both assaults were successfully repelled. On other fronts, things are quite active and rather intense. Right now, the enemy is using fiber optic drones. And especially what we are noticing now is that the number of enemy strike UAVs of the Molniya type being used has increased. In other words, the enemy, as before, is trying to find ways and areas where they could advance. But it is precisely thanks to those servicemen, including the units of the State Border Guard Service in the Sumy region, that we are able to hold back the enemy today.
Yes, there is almost 1,800,000 in the bank with a total goal of 10 million hryvnias. I emphasize this is for drones, Mavic 3T drones, drones on fiber optics, ground robotic systems, and everything necessary to help our people and eliminate those who are not ours. Absolutely not ours. Not people. Mr. Ivan, the weather, how significant are the adjustments it brings? Since there's still snow, as I understand, there's very little to hide behind. In
Sumy region, the snow still remains for now. There is still snow now, but the weather conditions are unfavorable for the infantry, especially for those guys who are currently sitting in the trenches because the snow is melting. And all this mud and water, it gets directly into the trenches. That's why our guys are holding the defense in extremely difficult conditions right now. But for flights, for drone operators, the weather conditions are quite favorable right now. There are many results, many sorties. The guys are working at full capacity, flying as far as possible into the enemy's rear. They search for and destroy targets. So right now, the weather conditions are playing into the hands of drone operators.
Tell me, does the appearance of the first greenery create additional opportunities for potential enemy sabotage and reconnaissance groups and their attempts to infiltrate somewhere?
It is certainly a possibility, although it might not happen in the very near future. And the reason for that is because right now, owing to the prevailing weather conditions we are experiencing, they are already playing a very significant role in the situation. Currently, considering that the Sumy region is mostly swampy terrain, forested and marshy, the passage of sabotage groups is practically impossible at the moment. In late spring and early summer, the activity of enemy sabotage groups may increase because, again, the weather conditions will be favorable for this.
What are the Russians currently using to shell the border areas? Besides strike-type drones, what else are they using?
They are using artillery less, but in the last 24 hours, the use of aviation has increased. 11 KABs were dropped on the Defense Forces positions in Sushchina over the past day. There is increased activity, increased use of aviation. I can't say what it's connected to, but last year it was exactly the same in spring and summer. At that time, the enemy also stepped up its use of aviation, and then about 30 to 40 KABs were dropped daily on Sumy region. In winter, the enemy did not do this. Air raids were quite rare, and now it's happening again. Increased activity.
QR code. Once again, I want to draw your attention to it. 10 million is the overall goal. Right now, there is 1,818,000 in the account. QR code, card number, phone, everything is in your hands. It takes 20 seconds of your time, really, and your contribution. Whatever amount each person can afford, Mr. Ivan, the enemy, and what is he made of? Who is he? This motley crew. Which armies, which units? Who in your area of responsibility is trying to break into our land?
This is important. Recently, the situation with the enemy has not changed. As before, there are about 40,000 personnel opposite the Sumy sector. The enemy is becoming more active, and more forces are concentrated specifically in the Polski direction. That's where more active combat is currently taking place. The core consists of structural units of the regular army of the Russian Federation. We are not observing any new reinforcements, rotations, or anything like that. The enemy is redeploying certain units from one direction to another, from one sector to another, in order to look for opportunities to break through. However, once again, the defense forces here are quite reliable. They are holding their positions, and over the past few months, the enemy has had no successes in this direction. These are mainly regular servicemen of the Russian army. We actually haven't encountered or run into any people from other countries in Korea, so we really can't speak about that experience at all.
Tell me, do you happen to see a lot of very young men among these massive enemy forces?
From what we see in the aerial footage captured by professional UAV operators just before a strike, mostly shows various people aged between 30 and 50 years old.
Thank you very much for joining our broadcast. This was Ivan Shevtsov, Colonel, Head of the Press Service of the 15th Mobile Border Detachment, Steel Border. He was with us via live video link, and we've just finished our conversation. With 1,826,000 hryvnias in the bank, the overall goal is 10 million. I want to emphasize this. So here's the QR code. Keep it handy and don't forget to scan it. The fundraising is still ongoing and not closed yet.